You to imagine yourself as an 18-year-old. My guest today, when she was 18, she was aspiring to be a PE teacher. She took a gap year out in Australia. Whilst on a farm, she contracted a virus that ultimately led to her being paralysed from the waist down. Now that's a significant setback by most people's standards, and I have heard Emma Wiggs MBE speak on a number of occasions, always inspiring. I'm delighted she's able to join us on the show today. 3 times Paralympic champion, 12 times World Paracanoe champion, Emma Wiggs MBE. Enjoy. We're delighted to welcome Emma Wiggs MBE to the After Dinner Leadership Dinner Table. Welcome, Emma.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
It's great to have you. We've met in person a couple of times up at the Nottingham Water Sports Centre. I don't know. Is that how you?
I know. Yeah, very good, very good. Cold, wet, windy Nottingham, but we love it.
And so it's nice to meet you in a slightly warmer occasion. And one of the things that I love to ask, first of all, before we get into the details of lessons learned, Emma, is if you can imagine yourself as a 20-year-old, what was memorable about that time for you?
For me, my 20s were somewhat challenging, Simon. I was really kind of coming to terms with the different look of my life. You know, I had been able-bodied up until the age of 18 and became disabled at 18. So my 20s were very much a battling, looking back now, a battling period of battling the people that said I couldn't do stuff, to prove them wrong, and also trying to relentlessly pursue my dream, which was to be a teacher. So I wanted to get to university, and I wanted to do what I had planned to do before disability kind of changed my life. So, you know, it took me till I was about 26 to finally complete everything and get a job as a teacher. So my 20s were, a real mixture of battle and then feeling like I really succeeded in getting that teaching job.
Yeah, I'm sure there's more to discover on that. Did you have a mentor in that in your 20s? Which is someone you would consider to be a mentor figure?
I think it might be that I was probably a bit old to be relying so much on my mum, but I think it probably was my mum. I don't think I had a mentor as such, as I would look at one now. I think that period of my life, I was obviously having to be helped and be looked after a bit more, and my mum sort of stepped up to that role, and probably was probably more reliant on her than most 20-year-olds, but certainly looked at someone that kind of gave me structure and never wavering support and belief that I could do what I wanted to do despite the challenges.
And still today, by the looks of your social media, I follow you on Instagram. She features quite regularly.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's an amazing woman, and I think she's been a real rock in our lives and my siblings, you know, along the way. And still, I've just had shoulder surgery, so I picked up the phone and said, do you want to come and stay for a couple of weeks? And I think she thought, oh, lovely, a holiday. And I said, well, actually, I could do with a bit of help. So you know, endlessly there, and certainly someone that, you know, I'm so grateful for.
Yeah, fantastic. And how is the surgery? How's the recovery going?
Yeah, I think it's slow. I think like any of these things, it's never quite as smooth as you expect. But still learning things, still trying to kind of find different ways to do things. But definitely it's been a hiccup. So after an amazing Paris, this has been a slight hiccup, but one that we needed to do. And I think it's really interesting that I can view this, what would be deemed a bit catastrophic. You know, I'm a canoeist and a wheelchair user, so to have shoulder surgery is pretty ending in terms of what you're then able to do. But I've just been able to kind of see this slightly differently. And although it's challenging, I feel confident that I'm in a better place and probably going to come back stronger. So I'm looking forward to that.
Emma, you've been endlessly inspiring. Every time I see you speak, and sometimes it's been in the context of speaking to business leaders. Those are the previous times I've seen. As I listen to you speak in other arenas, I've always found that. So I'm delighted you're with us today, and congratulations on another Paralympic gold to add to your collection. And,
I know it's a surprisingly shiny one. This one, Simon. It's got a lovely piece of the Eiffel Tower in it, and it never gets less awe-inspiringly brilliant to be part of the Paralympics and to to be able to come home with something shiny is the icing on the cake.
Yeah, I missed the Eiffel Tower component. I missed that story.
Oh,
What's
did you
that
not?
about?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
all
I
the
didn't see
medals
that.
from Paris Olympic and Paralympic Games have a piece of the actual Eiffel Tower in the front of them. So I think it was every games they try and do something unique, and
Yeah.
Paris have apparently been replacing girders. I'm not quite sure what a girder is even, but they've been replacing them over years, and they kept them all, and then I guess melted them down, and then printed them in these little pieces that are part of everybody's medal. So it feels
Oh, that's
really
awesome.
unique to be able to let people touch not only a Paralympic medal but touch the Eiffel Tower. So
Yeah.
yeah, incredibly grateful and
Oh,
fortunate
that's
to have
brilliant.
a couple of those in the pocket.
It's amazing. I love it. I was watching your race again today in preparation for this, actually, and I noticed your stroke rate is amazingly. Again, apologies if I'm using the wrong term, but the amount of strokes that you do in comparison to some of the other competitors is quite markedly different
Yeah, I
as a
think
style.
I've already given you bonus points, Simon, because you didn't call it rowing. So I'm absolutely delighted that you know it's canoeing. I think actually that's a really great example of how sometimes we have to kind of adapt to overcome challenges. So my stroke rate probably has always been a bit higher than the rest of the world, but this significant shoulder injury that we found out about in March had really impacted our ability to put power down in that canoe, in that boat. So in order to combat that and try to keep the same speed, we had to increase our stroke rate. So,
Right.
without wanting to put people to sleep after dinner, speed is a kind of a result of stroke rate and power. So you kind
Yeah.
of tweak one or tweak the other to get the end result. So we had to up it even more. So hopefully after this surgery, I can bring it back a little bit. I won't look quite like a Duracell bunny, but we'll be able to keep the boat going.
Amazing. Thank you. Now, I love to always find out what three leadership lessons do you wish you had learned earlier? Um, and I know you've prepared some. What have you got for us?
I think the first one, probably my most powerful one that I always go back to, is that we must always remember that we've got a choice in whatever it is we do. We have always got a choice. I think the second one is that communication is king. And I think that sometimes that lets us down, and sometimes it's a really powerful tool. So actually, always coming back to communication and how we do that is absolutely fundamental to success. And I think the other one, in terms of my leadership of myself, and I think hopefully the leadership that I try to role model to other people, is about integrity and our values. And if everything we do can have that, then we're never really going to be in a bad place. If we can look at ourselves in the mirror and think, actually, I may not have got the result I wanted, but I carried myself with integrity. My coach Brendan would say it to me a lot, and I think that's a really important, powerful skill to be able to have.
How does that play out in a training or a racing context? I just like I understand it's a life principle.
Yeah,
How does that apply in an elite athlete environment?
I think for me, so Brendan and I used to talk about this a lot. I think it was always about being true to my values and being really clear on how my um, behaviors, how my words, how my thoughts were either in line with those or a bit askew. And I
Yeah,
think if I think about moments where I haven't quite got things right, it's probably because those words that I said to somebody or the way that I responded to somebody actually were not in line with my values. And it's very easy when we're incredibly passionate about something, and something feels very pressured, and something feels very time critical, or in my world, outcome critical. Paralympic
yeah,
Games is kind of squeaky bum time, if we're being honest. Those are the pressured moments where we can, just kind of step away from that or lose that feeling. So I think tuning back into that integrity and trying to be a person and behave like a person and act like a person that I want to be and that I'm proud of, is really crucial. And when I look at times when I haven't done it, it's because I've kind of strayed away from it.
yeah. Such an important principle that, and I'm delighted that you've kind of got that as one of your points. And and you've linked back to these kind of pressure moments, stress moments, which can easily have us behaving in ways that are not aligned with the person that we espouse to be, or that we want to be, that we deeply know that we are. And so that's great. And I love that you're voicing about those values. How did you go about establishing what those values were for
Yeah,
you
I think
and
again
identifying
it was actually after my last injury. I'm making it sound like I'm injury prone. This is literally, I've only had two significant injuries in my whole career, but the first one was a wrist injury, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I completely derailed after that. I found it an incredibly, unbelievably challenging time. I felt disabled for the first time, and at that point, I'd been disabled for 20 years. So it was a bit of a shocker to suddenly be slapped around the face with all of the emotions and feelings and behaviours that I was faced with. And it probably came down to the fact that I'd kind of become Emma Wiggs the canoeist, which, if I wasn't going to be able to be a canoeist, what was I? And I think I'd kind of lost myself in that, and really kind of had not really a clear idea of who I was and how I wanted to be, other than the fact I was quite unhappy and couldn't really get myself out of this hole that I felt in. And I think maybe some people listening sometimes have times where they feel a bit stuck like that. So I kind of reached out eventually and asked for some support, and worked with a brilliant clinical psychologist, and he talked to me a lot about values at the start, and actually got me to come up with 4 or 5 values that were me. And we did quite a lot of work. We didn't just pick them off a list and call it a day. We then looked at how I would define them, how I would write them, and then what those would look like. So Emma, one of them is being passionate about challenge. So I had to kind of really define and write down, what does that look like? And then what behaviors show this and what behaviors don't show it. And it sounds like a lot of homework, but it was probably one of the most pinnacle moments in my realization about how we are and how we respond to things, and how we can carry on being successful, or more importantly being happy, is linked to our values.
I agree, and I love that you've done the hard work. It is
Yeah,
the hard work
because you only have to do it
yeah,
once. You just have to do it once, Simon, and then I've got this document still, and I go back to it, and it's such a, I read them and I think, yeah, that's me, and it's a really good reminder that actually, none of them are about winning a canoe race. So if I stop winning canoe races, I'm actually still going to be this person, but actually this person is what's important to me. And the times in my life where I have struggled or where I haven't got things right, they are not lined up with those values. So it's a living document, really, that I think is really, really valuable.
Brilliant. When did that wrist injury occur in the cycle of competition?
It was in 2018, so smack bang between Rio and what would have been Tokyo 2020, but obviously we got an extra year. So
yeah, and the implications of that in terms of your preparations for what was Tokyo then. What was going on for you? I'm just linking back to that. You're saying you derailed. I can understand why, but I'm just interested in what was going on around that time.
Yeah, I think it impacted. We had the surgery kind of at September time, so it was the start of our winter training. So it kind of was going to impact our winter training. And for me, I have always placed massive importance on the fact that I work hard in the winter, and it does lots of things, that ability to push yourself to stupid limits where you're sick, or that belief that it doesn't matter if bits of me don't work, and I race against people who've got more bits that work, because I can work harder than them in the winter, and I can push myself to that different level. To suddenly find myself in a position where I wasn't able to do that was really worrying, and really kind of contributed to that. And I think actually looking back now, looking at what I'm facing now, it was quite minor, that surgery. I was back in the gym in kind of 4 weeks doing some bits, but not fully doing it. But we were obviously helped out a bit with the Tokyo Games being delayed a year. But I did win, I won the World Championships the following year. So, and I got gold and silver, I think, at that one. So it wasn't a complete write-off by any stretch, but it felt like it. absolutely, and probably left me lower than when I initially became disabled, which seems ridiculous.
And it's interesting the way that you've described that and going back to the earlier conversation, that part of your identity was wrapped in the winter training. Of course, when that goes, it's like that was a big part of who you were, is how you're describing that, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I think that again is another really interesting point, isn't it? Because I think for lots of us, whether it be sport or whether it be our job or our university or whatever it is, we can become that thing. And there's part of me that goes, yeah, but then that's the only way to be successful, because then you immerse yourself in it and you're all in, and I think there's a real thought process that that's what you need to do to be successful. And I was 100% in that camp. I was like, I'm all in, or I'm nothing. Yeah. And it's so unhelpful and wrong. I genuinely believe it's wrong to become one thing. And I see real value now in being open to doing things differently, in redefining what we need to do, and being more mindful of protecting ourselves and choosing to spend our energy wisely. Whereas I just chose, I used to even obsess, Simon, about resting on a Sunday. I had to be the best at resting on a Sunday. Well, it turns out it's not terribly restful if you spend your day obsessing about being restful. So I think it's about balance, and I think it's about just realizing it's just not one thing. Yes, there are times where you have to make choices and make, really clever decisions, but actually balance and having that kind of context is so powerful.
Great. Some of what you have shared, I'm confident, will go back to this very first lesson learned that you mentioned around we have choice. And it sounds like there was some learning in the wrist injury section of your life there. But could you share a little bit more why that was your first lesson learned that you shared with us today?
Yeah, I think it is really about the fact that we always have a choice. We have a choice about whether we get up in the morning. We have a choice about the attitude that we take into the day or into a tough meeting, or everything that we do, whether it be a behavior or a conversation or an action. We could choose not to do it. And I think particularly, if I was thinking back to my 20s, in fact, no, because there wasn't probably no social media in my 20s, but if I was a 20-year-old now, there is so much choice in how you interpret things or how you view things, and how you think what someone might have meant in a text message or whatever. And it's really powerful. Again, it was this psychologist, and he said to me, I was saying something about it's so unfair when this person does this, and that isn't right, and that's not how I would behave. And he just said to me, that's fine, as long as you're choosing to see it that way. And I can remember thinking, what? Like,
how dare you?
How dare you? It's not me, this is them. Yeah. And we did a whole piece of work around the fact that I could choose to see it differently. I could choose to think. And Brendan, again, my coach, was really good at this. He's such a skilled communicator. And he would say, take a breath, take a breath, give yourself an uppercut, and let's think about this again, or think about how else it could have been, or what else you could do with that information.
Could you just describe what it's like being in the canoe with your physical situation, first of all? Because I remember you talking about being like an egg or something along those lines. I'm taking the memory back to you, but also your comparison with other people who might have one leg or something like that. There's something around that stuck in my memory from a few years ago. I feel it's connected to this point around choice.
And I think again, this is a really powerful thing, isn't it? Because we've got a choice about how we view the situation and the context. And for me, as a Paralympic athlete, Paralympic sport isn't fair. It fundamentally isn't fair, because there is not an infinite number of people with exactly the same disabilities. So you have to race against people with similar but not the same disability. So I used to race against an athlete. I still race against athletes that have one leg. So the classifications then can seem quite unfair. And I used to really obsess about this. Like, I can't compete against them. They've got a leg. Every day I would see different things that people with different functions could do. And again, it was around, you could choose to sit like that, or you could choose to say, that's Paralympic sport. If I'm choosing to take part, then I have to accept that these are the kind of goalposts, these are the situations, and I'm going to choose to put my energy elsewhere. And that was a really big game changer. And I've kind of adapted and molded over the last kind of 4 or 5 years. I have the ultimate choice about the things that I spend my energy on. And comparison to other people is the thief of joy, was a quote I read once. And absolutely, I think that's true. And I have ashamedly wasted bucket loads of energy on comparison over the years. And it is something that I actively, again, try to take a step back and a breath to stop doing it.
And you use the word energy rather than time. You've spent energy on that.
Yeah, I like to think of it as this. I like to think of it as this ball. Again, maybe because I'm sporty, but I like to think of this ball. And every time, and some days that ball's small, and some days that ball's big. So some days it might be a squash ball, and some days it might be a beach ball. But if I am choosing to worry what other people are doing, that's a chunk out of it's almost like a bite out of that ball, which leaves less for me for doing things that are going to help me, make me feel good, help me move further towards my goal. And it was just, I'm quite a visual person. It was a really nice visual reminder that actually, if you take a chunk out, that's not coming back straight away. So it's gone, and then you've got less to work with. So I think, when I chat to businesses and to young people, they kind of quite like that analogy, because it's okay to stay up late at night as long as that's a chunk out your energy ball.
Yes.
And then you can find ways to boost it back up.
Yeah, good. When you were speaking earlier, you mentioned about this goal that you had to be a PE teacher. Clearly, you've just come back from Australia with a virus that's left you paralyzed from the waist down. How did you continue to pursue, any immediate kind of, I don't know, let's say rationale for that choice could easily have been pushed to one side? I'm interested, how did you decide to continue to go down the PE teacher route?
I think I wish
there was a choice in that. Was there?
There was a choice, and I think I wish I could tell you it was a choice that was grounded in sense, but I think it was absolute bloody mindedness as an 18-year-old and stubbornness, which I think got me through to a certain point, and then I think it probably bites you in the bum a few years later. And I think there's, looking back, with hindsight, there's cleverer ways of doing it. But I think there was an element of, this isn't going to be my life. This is not, these people don't know what they're talking about. This is not going to be how I live my life. And I think that was my initial tactic. And I think probably quite helpful for me and unhelpful for people that had to live with me and live around me. And again, I think we can get ourselves in those kind of stuck cycles. But I think it would be unfair to not acknowledge that there was a bit of that, which I think got me so far. And then I think it's always been for me around the fact that I want to take opportunities. I want to make sure that I don't have any major regrets. I want to make sure that I've done the best with the bits that work to make the most of the opportunities that I have in front of me, particularly when I don't think I can. And I think that's probably something that has got stronger as a person with a disability, but certainly is not, just for people like me. I think we can all have that desire to try things and to experience things and to make the best of things. And I think that's quite a nice way to look at life. I also think that anyone in my situation, you've only really got a choice to crack on, haven't you? You don't really have a choice to give up.
No, well, I guess not giving up, but it may be a real a changing of goal. Someone would say, okay, now this has happened, I'm going to be a teacher, not a PE teacher, or I'm going to, I don't know, be an accountant.
And you know what? And that's perfectly valid too. Yeah. I think that's the bit that I find really interesting that I kind of learned over my sporting career was around the context piece. So, success for people and decisions for people and choices for people have to involve the context that they're facing. My context back then was I I have no plan B. I want to be a PE teacher and I don't want this to stop me. Nowadays, I can think back to winning my silver medal at Tokyo, and every single interview started, Emma, you must be disappointed. And I was thinking, well, no, this is amazing. Like, because the context for me was my teammate is faster. I'm going to get as close to her as I possibly can, but she's going to have to make a mistake for me to win. So my success is to deliver my race, to be as close as I can, and I'm probably going to get a silver medal. So, if I had let other people's idea of context and success be dictated to me, that silver medal would feel very differently. So I think we need to make clever choices. We need to find a way to define for us what's going to work, and that was to pursue my original plan. It probably would have been a smoother ride for me and for everyone else if I had tweaked it slightly.
Wow. And where you are now, with the shoulder surgery that you've had, what's the drive in November 2024 for you?
First of all, it's to just get rehabbed and to get back. The shoulder had become really impactful on daily life as well as canoeing. So we went for the operation, and we're now in a much more challenging situation. But my immediate goals and focus is on getting back so that I can train full time in my canoeing, which is what I love to do and what I still feel I've got a huge amount to offer in. But at the minute, my challenges are using a knife and fork and wheeling my wheelchair and living and getting through. But as my gorgeous granny would have always said to me, this phase will pass. And I think that's another really useful reminder that whatever challenge it is, which for me sounds really big, whereas some people are facing terrible challenges, and I'm worrying that I can't use a knife and fork. Whatever it is, this phase will pass, and generally it will.
Again, this is a possible misquote, but you're fitter now than you ever were when you were able-bodied, whatever, and just that kind of different perspective on disability. I have a good friend, Mike Adams, who you may know from kind of Purple Tuesdays and this kind of thing, and he just inspires me whenever I speak to him. And in a similar way, I think kind of the way people view disability, I think, is often warped or kind of very narrow. What's your message around that to the world, I guess?
Yeah, I think I always feel a bit like Spider-Man in these sorts of situations, particularly around the Paralympic Games, because I think it was Spider-Man. I might have got my superhero wrong, but I think he said, with great power comes great responsibility. And I feel like the power that we have as a Paralympian to represent the society that have disabilities is huge, and it's a huge responsibility. And by that, Simon, I'm not meaning everybody with a disability should be a Paralympian, because I'm absolutely convinced that's not the way forward, and that's not what we're saying. What our responsibility is to show people that diversity and difference is not something to divide us. I think it's something that can unite us, whether it's something like a disability or whether it's diversity of thought or a different way of looking at things. I love the fact that those two words can, at first glance, show real divide and show real opposites, and that can be scary. I've only got to look at how sometimes people look at you when you're in the supermarket or at a petrol station, and they don't know. They're not bad people. They just don't know how to look at you or how to talk to you or how to help is generally what people look, and they look awkward. And it would be great for the world to shed themselves of that responsibility, and actually to just kind of embrace the fact that difference and diversity can actually unite us and make us a much better place. So I would encourage people to view people as humans first, and the differences and the diversity as part of the wonderful world that we live in.
Amen. I agree. Thank you. I started off at the beginning asking about your 20-year-old self. What advice would you give to her from the vantage point of 2024?
Wow. Okay. I think it would probably be, without wanting to repeat what I've already said, that just take a breath and remember you've always got a choice. And I think that's just one of the most powerful things that can help us in all sorts of different situations. Even something so trivial as, someone cutting you up at a traffic light or whatever it might be. We've always got a choice about how we're going to respond. I think I would say to her, keep surrounding yourself with good people. People are everything. And I've been really lucky that I've got amazing people, family and friends, teammates, coaches that I've been lucky enough to work with, and surrounding yourself with them, you're not gonna often go wrong, and you're not gonna find yourself, even in the darkest moments, there for very long alone. You might stay there for a bit, but you won't be alone. So surround yourself with good people, and probably the final one, I would just urge her to realize who she is and what's important to her back then, because it will save a huge amount of the roller coaster that could potentially follow if you can nail down your values and then just really try and just live with integrity through them.
Yeah. Emma, thank you so much. I feel just to ask about Brendan in this kind of, you talked about coach. He's come into the conversation a couple of times today. I've not met him, but I can feel your regard for him. What is it that you appreciate? What attribute does he bring that you admire?
I think he's, I probably get upset now, Simon, because he's actually left, which is devastating, but he's got a brand new job in Australia. He's a big Australian, and he's just the most remarkable guy. And he's doing amazingly out there. So I've taken all my learnings with me from him. But I think his biggest traits and bonuses are the fact that he's got an unbelievable way of communicating. He's got more emotional intelligence than I've seen in most people over all the years of my life, and he's got it more than most of them put together. Yeah. And his ability to read a situation and to read a person and understand a person sets him apart in how he is then able to communicate with you and get the best from you. So he's taught me endless amounts. And when he told me he was leaving, I think I worked out it was 80 days that we had left together. So I started writing this book called The Book of Brendan. So I rinsed him for 80 days of knowledge and learnings. And it sounds sad, but it's like become my little Bible. Just the things that we can learn from each other. It's the greatest gift he could have given me, was being able to work with him for that time. So yeah, there's too much to talk about for this podcast, probably.
Emma, you're endlessly inspiring to me. I've loved following your work, and it was kind of more serendipity that brought us together a few years ago on this leadership training, and I'm really pleased for the wisdom that you've shared on this episode as well. This like really powerful messages of resilience, and I love this linking back to this integrity to your values. And one of the there's so much.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's not, nothing I've said is brand new. I think I've probably got some different experiences of things, but yeah, I just feel really strongly and really grateful to be able to hopefully share a few little insights with people that might be able to help them. And it's one of the greatest things that I do, other than paddling a piece of carbon fiber over 200 meters. It's one of my favorite things to do. So thank you so much for chatting.
It's an absolute pleasure, and I wish you the best of success in your recovery and your healing and your goals there, and in your use of a knife and fork actually as well. I
know. I'm hopeful that it will continue to improve.
Yeah. But your longer term aspirations and everything as well. I'm just delighted, and I'll be following and seeing how you're getting on. But maybe another conversation in a couple of years. And
yeah, well, that would be great. And it's always, LA is in 2028, which looks like quite a good Paralympic game. So we shall see if I can keep the youngsters at bay and push my way all the way to there. So yeah, exciting times.
Great, thanks, Emma. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us at the After Dinner Leadership Table, and trust that you've got good value from listening to this episode. Thanks for being here. One question for you. The question is, so what? What will you do with what you've just heard? And here's a few suggestions. Number one, lead with more purpose. 2, mentor with patience. 3, share with pride. You think of anyone who you know that would benefit from listening to what you've just heard, that would help them to be a better leader today or in the future. Please share, like, subscribe. It helps other people to consume the content. And we wish you all the very best of success. And please listen again to another After Dinner Leadership conversation.